It is often teased in diplomatic circles that it is good diplomacy to say nothing while speaking. And that really makes the diplomat somewhat a man of very few words. But that cannot be said about a politician who undoubtedly is a man of many words. Welcome to Reflections on Africa's largest TV network, the NTA. My name is Yusuf Nadab Usman. Every week on this program, we take a look at activities and events within time and space around an individual in order to really see how good they were and how bad they were, with a view to trying to make tomorrow a better place for all of us to stay. That's good. This week, my personality is Ambassador Jibrin Dada Chinade. Ambassador Jibrin Dada Chinade is an 82-year-old diplomat who started at a very young age, and of course somebody who went through from a foreign officer as far back as 1964 through to become ambassador of Nigeria in so many countries. Ambassador Chinade, welcome to Reflections.
Thank you very much, Yusuf.
Lay the background for this program. Tell us what really happened between your birth and your education, Western education, Quranic education. I'm just asking this question against the background of the fact that Chinade is a very remote place, a remote town in Katagum local government area of Bauchi State. And looking back in 1939, one can imagine how so small it was. And from there, we got this colossus called Ambassador Jibrin Dada Chinade.
Thank you very much. I think I will start by saying that my background is a very rural, sleepy community in Chinade town of Katagum local government. Well, in those days, it was called Katagum Native Authority.
All right.
The school where I first went was the elementary school in Chinade, which was established in 1944. Mm-hmm. From there on, we took examination. They selected, I think I could remember, only 5 of us from Chinade.
Right.
To go and set the common entrance examination to Bauchi Middle School in those days, because that's the only high school in this whole state. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, only 2 of us passed from that class of 1946. Okay. We moved on to Bauchi Middle School, or Bauchi's, which transformed itself to Bauchi Secondary School. Mm-hmm. After that, I was able to enroll as a teacher for grade 2 teaching certificate in what we call Gombe Teachers College. Right. We were also the first set in northern Nigeria at that time. Mm-hmm. I was also lucky to be one of the few who passed at the first sitting of the exam. And in fact, I could say that my result was so good that the then Minister of Education, and the Minister of Education, Isa Kaita, selected me to go and teach in Katsina Teachers College, which was also producing the same students.
Which year was that?
That should be about 1960.
Right.
You can imagine.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there was then, around 1961, the government decision to select some few of us to go to Britain or to go to Ahmed Bello University for higher education. Our thrust of education was education, psychology of education, philosophy, and history. That was the thrust of that program. Okay. When I came back, I was appointed as education officer in the Northern Region Civil Service, Northern Nigeria Civil Service. Mm-hmm. I was posted to Bauchi and was education officer there. And then suddenly there was this need to get some young Northern Nigerians to join the Nigerian Foreign Service. And then we came in. I reported to the ministry in August 1964 as third secretary what we call third secretary, like a lieutenant in the army. We call them third secretary in foreign affairs.
Now, somebody who went out, go to a background to come and teach and educate and the rest of them, has now found himself in foreign affairs and foreign relations.
Affairs, yes.
You know, how did you see the job?
Exactly. That's a good question. I started in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs under B.A. Holist. When I reported to him was, Jibrin, you are coming to a different world. You have to read and read. I say, there's no problem, sir. I've always been interested in reading. I can tell you that when I was in the secondary school at one time, I can say I've read every book in that library.
Every book?
Every book. In fact,
regardless of subject or whatever?
I've always been interested in reading. And I can recall the book that has influenced me a lot was what we call 100 Great Lives. This was a very famous book written around 1950s, 60s in secondary schools, middle schools, to encourage people. It's a collection of famous people through history. There was Socrates, there was Faraday, the electrician, the man who invented electricity. There was Einstein interested. When I came, he said, okay, Jibrin, go and read the formation of the OAU. This was just 1 year. I came to the ministry in 1964. OAU was established in May in Addis Ababa in 1963.
Okay.
So he asked me to go and read everything about the formation of the African Union. And that's really set me on. I did it very well. And from there on, I think after some time I moved to protocol because we are supposed to be exposed to all aspects of the ministry. Then later on we had what we call an induction course at the University of Lagos, where all the newly recruited officers were sent to Lagos University for an induction course. In those days, it was only, I think, about 6 months.
Okay, now, in those years, between 1964 and 1969, I would say,
yes.
before you were posted to, Freetown, Sierra Leone as acting High Commissioner, that was in 1969.
Yes.
The Nigerian Civil War was on.
Exactly.
And at that time, it wasn't really easy for people like you, as young as you were, and here you are at that time really trying to see how you can, dose tension wherever you were, especially as you were going out and into Nigeria, and how...
The first coup of January 1966 found me in London. I was in the High Commission, at the High Commission. In fact, I could tell you that that very day, I was what you call the duty officer in the High Commission. It was on Saturday.
Okay.
I reported for duty around 11 o'clock to the High Commission at number 9 Northern Boland Avenue and found the place surrounded by journalists.
Okay.
And I was the most senior officer, diplomatic officer on duty that day. And I said, what's happening? I didn't know there was a coup in Nigeria when I reported to the High Commission. And journalists were asking me, Mr. Chinade, what's happening in your country? I didn't even know what to say. So I walked into the office, climbed up the top floor to talk to my communication officer, because we always have a communication officer with Lagos, Badagry. And I went and I said, look, what's happening? They said, sir, we have lost contact with Lagos since 12 o'clock.
He too didn't know what was happening?
He didn't know.
Okay.
So gradually it opened up as a change of government.
Okay.
And I was all the time in London. At that time, I was on what is called the political desk. I was a political officer then in the High Commission. And of course, we went through the initial first 6 months of Iransi. We went through the change of government of General Yakubu Gawan. And then I was later on posted to Liverpool, what we call Liverpool area office. I was in charge of the Liverpool area office, looking after Manchester, Birmingham, and Liverpool. We had a heavy concentration of Nigerian students, and I was in charge of their consular, education, and problems related to their life in Britain. I could recall, let me tell you one interesting incident.
Right.
When I was taken over from a dear friend of mine, Chidi Ofam. Chidi Ofam was in the area officer. So I was posted there to take over. When I was coming, the Nigerian community thought an Igbo man was coming to take over.
Because it was Igbo man just living?
No, because of my name.
All right, the
Chinade,
name sounded...
Mr. Chinade. Some people say Chinade doesn't sound. So the reception I got at the railway station in Liverpool was oriented towards an Igbo reception. And when I spoke to them, it turned out to be a Fulani man or a Hausa man addressing Nigerian crowd. Right. Somebody said, that's true, Nigeria is really one. But I settled down very well.
Okay.
I settled in Liverpool, and I took my high commissioner around. At that time, we had Brigadier Ogundipe. Ogundipe came over after the coup, and we took him round to Manchester, Birmingham to address the students, and I went round, and we got him very well. And
what was the reaction of Nigerians to the coup that took place back home?
It became purely, unfortunately, an ethnic division. People from the north were very upset with the January coup. Generally, you can hardly find a foreign student or a student from northern Nigeria who was in support of the coup, because most of them were sponsored by the government of northern Nigeria. The others were not so openly supportive, but a bit indifferent, in the sense that they saw it as a dispute between the Hausa, Fulani, and the Igbo. I could recall at that time there was Umar Diko.
Okay.
He was a student then.
Diko, right.
Aminu Wali, who was my former foreign minister eventually, was also one of the students. Your former DG, Mohammed Ibrahim, was one of my chaps there also. They're all with us in London. And they were very, very angry with the first coup. In fact, eventually they even led a delegation to Nigeria. But the end of it all was that we got on very well, we look after them. We, in the High Commission, of course, we are representing Nigeria. We are not representing the North, we are not representing the East or the West. We are the Nigerian High Commission. In fact, after the coup, the regional offices were all incorporated into the High Commission. They were all abolished by Iran.
All right. So you were in Sierra Leone as
acting High Commission.
Acting High Commission between 1969 and 1971.
Yes.
And the war was on then. It was almost over, but it was on then.
In fact, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
When I had come back to Lagos, and I was posted to take over from Chief Omolodun, who was then he too was acting in Sierra Leone. And I was to go over to take over from Chief Omolodun. He was appointed as Nigerian High Commissioner to Pakistan. And I was to go and take over as First Secretary and of course Chargé d'Affaires or Acting High Commissioner. So I went over to Sierra Leone. And I enjoyed the Sierra Leone posting very well, because when I arrived, Sierra Leone was about to recognize Biafra. Yes. Sakash Stevens, then the president, was very close to the Biafran lobby. In fact, I can tell you a very interesting part of history. My then permanent secretary, Francis Mwekedi, was in Sierra Leone as lobbyist for Biafra. And I arrived, here is this young Chinade whom he recruited into the Foreign Service, and now is my job to bring him into the fold again, to come back. I was able to succeed and got on very well. And there was your former colleague, Sam Mazata. Sam Mazga was a Sierra Leonean journalist who was the editor of the federal government newspaper in Lagos.
Okay.
Sam Mazga was dismissed, and he went over and took the editorship of a very powerful evening newspaper in Sierra Leone. He was so much against us.
Okay.
And he lobbied around people like my former permanent secretary, Francis Mwekedi, Colonel Wong, and so many others to be against Nigeria. That's why Sierra Leone was almost on the verge of recognizing Biafra when it collapsed. And I was there all through.
How so strong was the propaganda machine of the Biafrans then to have gotten that far?
Oh, in Sierra Leone, it was very strong. Actually, we had many Nigerians who were in support of the federal government. It was very, very interesting. I enjoyed the posting.
Okay.
Virtually, I know everybody then. And they know my wife, they know me, Mr. Chinade, Mrs. Chinade, and the children. No, I enjoyed the posting in Sierra Leone.
And which means you didn't like leaving Sierra Leone to Central African Republic because that is where you were posted to
when I
after
came
the
back,
Rwanda?
when I came back, there was a state visit by President General Bokassa. General
To Nigeria?
Bokassa to Nigeria
Okay.
to visit General Gawan, our then head of state. And after the visit, President Bokassa insisted that Nigeria must have an embassy in his country. And so I didn't know anything about it. My PAMSEC called me. The same Francis Mwekedi. No, this was after, not the same, it was Joe Iyala, then the deputy. So they sent me to Central African Republic. I didn't know anything about it. I have to read what you call post report. I don't even know why it existed. It was in the middle of Africa. It was a French-speaking country, and I didn't know anything about the country. I was posted to Central African Republic to open the mission with 5 of my staff. I can still recall one of them is turned out to be an ambassador to Malaysia, Kinsanya. Was our last ambassador to Addis Ababa.
How was that assignment? I'm just trying
Very
to picture Jem Bedel Bokassa,
Kassa.
how strong that person was, the empire he tried to create and establish out of a republic, and how so strong he was. And here you are.
Very strong, But we got on very well with Bokassa. I can tell you a lot of stories. I followed his rise to power. When I got there, he was President Avi, President for Life. That was his title. That's what we call him. President Avi, President for Life. Eventually, he turned himself into an emperor. From emperor, that was after I left, of course. I was, I think, in London when he became the emperor of Central African Republic. But I got him very well. And I can tell you another interesting story about Central Africa.
What is it?
There was a day I was sitting in my house after office hours. I had a call from the foreign minister that President Bokassa wanted me for dinner. So I went after dinner. He said, I want you to tell General Gawan that my daughter is getting married. And I want to invite him, and I want a gift. You can imagine with Bokassa. After the dinner, I was privileged to be informed. Of course, I conveyed my message to Lagos, and we prepared an excellent gift for the lady. For the president didn't go to the wedding. I represented him. But it was such a very colorful assignment. All the time we were around the president. He likes to see this huge embassy title.
There was this story about Jembedel Bukasa
Yes.
as being very lavish in lifestyle, as being very autocratic.
Yes.
His house was more or less like another town, I would say. He was in everything. He was so rich and richer than the country, they say.
So he's somebody who was then full of life, full of ceremonies. And he was really very much in charge of the country. Nobody can oppose him. Nobody. He was very much on his own, apart from the French ambassador who was dropping hints and advice. We, from the African side, really didn't have much. Later on, he a bit lined up with Gaddafi when I was there, because there was a day he converted to Islam.
Okay.
We were all there. in the mosque.
Jembedel Bukasa.
Yes, he became a Muslim.
All right.
And he invited, I can write a book
Right.
about Bokassa.
Yeah.
He invited us to a Friday prayers. And I can't recall his Muslim name, but he gave all his ministers Muslim name. And he asked the foreign minister, Joseph Potro was his name, I think Abdul Karim or something. He said, what's your name? The minister said, all right, let's all go back to what we were before. He changed his religion on the spot.
Right there.
Right there. Because it was so sudden. They couldn't remember. So I enjoyed my assignment there.
You are also in Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde.
Cape Verde was when I became an ambassador, after I've come back from London.
Okay.
It was President Obasanjo, or General Obasanjo then, who appointed me ambassador to Guinea,
All right.
to secretary for countries.
In Guinea, you were
Honors.
Guinea national.
Secretary and President Chef Shagali were very close friends.
Okay.
One of my assignments was to see what I can do to find out about Diallo Telly, the first OAU Secretary General. You know, he was imprisoned by Secretary. He was imprisoned by Secretary and eventually killed, died there in prison. I wouldn't say he was killed, but he died in prison. So I was trying to use the relationship between Shagali and Nigeria. You know, they took me as a Fulani man. I could remember the foreign minister, Abdullahi Toure, and that was the Guinean foreign minister, was my neighbor next door.
Okay.
And we got on very well. He speaks Fulani fluently. I don't speak a word of Fulani. I may look like a Fulani, but I don't speak a word of Fulani. But we got on very well. He was the foreign minister, and I got on very well with them. Sometimes, because of the excellent relationship I had built with the ministry, when President Secretary wanted to travel, you know, he didn't have a personal aircraft. I could easily secure one for him from Nigeria.
Okay.
And we got on very well with him.
Okay.
But he was a tough person. I can tell you also one experience which I think you may be interested. For the first time in my life, I witnessed a coup in Guinea.
Okay.
It was a big National Day celebration in September. And we were at what you call Palace the People, Congress Hall, as we call it here. We were celebrating, we were having a big dinner, there was a lot of music, and there was a coup. In the middle of it, somebody threw a grenade in the hall from the top. I saw it.
While you were there?
Yes, while I was there with my wife. All the ambassadors were there, not me alone. And you can imagine the confusion. They were attempting to assassinate the secretary. This was around 11:30. There was a total confusion on that occasion. And we all had to run for our dear life. My wife, in fact, left her handbag, her shoes. We rushed to the car. We got home and we tuned on the radio. There was nothing on the radio. Until the next morning we heard it was an attempted coup.
Okay.
About 7 people were killed in that hall. President Secretary escaped unhurt. No minister was killed. There was, of course, a curfew for almost 3 months in the country. But it was a terrible experience to see people being killed in a public place with them. We were then, what is our interest in Guinea was really the iron ore, because we wanted to use iron ore in Guinea to support our Ajakuta project.
Okay.
That was the main Nigeria, apart from consultation with Secretary on African Affairs. Our main economic interest was Mefarigi Nimba. We had a joint company called Mefarigi Nimba in Guinea to exploit the development of the iron ore so we can use it in Ajakuta.
Okay.
I don't know what happens to it since then.
But did it get, started well, that
No,
relationship?
there was some problem of the area, rail link. To bring bauxite from Mefarigi Nimba, is a forest area, into Conakry port was not an easy. It requires a lot of investment. And the French were not too keen at the beginning, but we had about almost 30% of the shareholding in that company.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about Russia. When you talk about this Ajakuta, I can remember the Russians who are behind the construction of the establishment of that very big company since the 60s.
Yes.
And there were so many stories about that. The British people, the UK wasn't happy with that kind of connection, talking about the Socialist Republic then and the Cold War, while Nigerians have already started that with the Russians and the rest of them. You are an ambassador in Russia.
Yes.
I don't know, how did it go? Ajakuta is...
I can tell you that Ajakuta has been a huge investment for the Nigerian government. We have spent almost $50 billion on Ajakuta. We have worked on it for almost 40 years, and it's still there. I've been to Ajakuta many times. I've taken the Russian Minister of Power. I've worked closely with the then Minister of Power and Steel, Nura Imam, AVM. Nura Imam. I've worked with him very closely. I've followed the project up to today. Ajakuta is a big issue. It's not let me tell you what the Russian minister told me once I was instructed. When I was going, President Babangida said, Jibrin, I'm sending you there to reactivate Ajakuta.
Good.
That's what he told me. So that's one of your national assignments. Go and do something about Ajakuta. And I went with a lot of zeal and interest. But the problem is the structure of the company, the size of the company, and the material for it to operate it successfully. There is a similar factory in Russia where they employ 60,000 people. 60,000. It's a whole town.
60,000 people.
People.
Employed.
Yes, and that iron and steel thing. So when I come back, I went to see the minister in charge. He said, Ambassador, Russia has done all it could in terms of construction. It's almost 95%, some people are even saying 98% completed physically. But he said, let me give you a very good summary. Ajakuta is a kitchen. That's what he told me. A kitchen is to produce cooked food. We have built the kitchen and you have to cook the food. That's the iron and steel. He said, what you need is connection to bring the materials. Iron. At that time, we had no iron of high quality that will run Ajakuta. He was telling me the nearest you have is to get it from Australia. Australia.
Far away Australia.
Yes. But you don't have the railway connection then between Wari and Ajakuta. You have to bring the imported coal and coking coal by rail because you can't. You say you need 20,000 trucks. 20,000 trucks to bring in from Wari if you are doing it by road. You need a railway. At that time, there was no railway between Wari
And Ajakuta.
and Ajakuta. Now I think they have it. You need the cooking. You need, once you fire the generators or whatever they call them, I can't remember. They are more than generators. You say it will take 6 months to switch it off. You can't stop it.
For 6 months.
6 months. I'm not an engineer. This was what the Russian minister told me. So the problem of Ajakuta was at one time, President Obasanjo tried to address it. He sold it. He sold it as a private sector. And then later it was reverted again. Now it's in limbo. But fortunately, our President Buhari, paid a visit to a conference, African conference convened by Russia in Sochi on the Black Sea. At that visit, which was about 2 years ago, there was an agreement, a new agreement between Nigeria and the Russian Federation to reactivate Ajakuta. Now the responsibility is in the office of the SGF. The SGF is now the chairman of that committee. His mandate and assignment by the president is to work with the Russians company, get finance, get material, and reactivate it before either it's going to be sold. I know we can't run this. We can't run Ajakuta.
You cannot.
We cannot. I've said it to many people in the house when they ask me. I said, look, to be fair to us as Nigerians, the government cannot run Ajakuta on a purely governmental system. It has to be privatized.
So let's continue. Now, in case you are just joining us, the program is Reflections. We are reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority. And the discussion is on with Ambassador Jibrin Dada Chinade. We'll take a break now. Don't go away. You're welcome back. Now, sir, let's talk finally on this ambassadorial issue.
Yes.
Let's visit The Hague. Let's go to Netherlands briefly.
Netherlands, yes.
Whenever you mention Netherlands, one thing that comes to mind, the first name is Holland, that is one.
Holland,
and
that's
then
the name
number
for it
two,
also.
and then it goes to say, the second thing is you remember the ICJ, International Court of Justice.
National Court of
Hague.
Justice,
And
very
then-
much so.
And thirdly, you start thinking about the windmills, and of course,
Absolutely.
some cheese, if possible.
Absolutely. And the flowers too.
And the flowers too. So how was the experience in Netherlands? Briefly.
Oh, I enjoyed my assignment in the Netherlands very well. I was sent there by President Shagali. When he was sending me there, he said, Ambassador, I'm sending you to look after my friend, Justice Elias.
Who was that?
He was the Nigerian member of the International Court of Justice.
Okay.
They're very old. I think he was about 82 or 86 when
At
I
the
got there.
time?
Yes, when he was there. And Justice Elias was our first Attorney General and Minister of Justice under Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa,
Okay.
together with President Shagali. So when I got there, I know my assignment is to make sure that he's comfortable. He was alone with his wife. He was living in a hotel for almost 10 years.
10 years.
Yes, he was living in a hotel. He has no house because he can't run the affairs of a house. And the UN system doesn't allocate a house for you. They give you, they monetize all the conditions at that point. So I gave him a car. I attached a driver to him permanently, and I was very close to him
Okay.
because he was a world famous, renowned jurist. Everybody knew Justice Alive. And eventually, he acted as President of the World Court of Justice. My former head of state, President Olusegun Obasanjo, was coming to The Hague. And I knew President Obasanjo very well. And he phoned me to say, Jibrin, I'm coming to The Hague to buy day-old chickens. And he was my former head of state. He was the one who appointed me as ambassador to Guinea-Conakry. So I said, I must hold a very big dinner for him, diplomatic dinner. So he was my former head. And I did. And I went and told him, I said, sir, this is the guest list. I'm inviting Justice Elias. He said, Jibrin, are you sure he would come?
Okay.
I said, okay, let me find out, because I've only sent the invitation. I went to Justice Elias and said, sir, my former head of state would come, and I wish you would grace the occasion by being there personally to honor. He said, I'm not coming.
He said?
Yes. He said, I'm not coming. I am not coming.
What was his reason?
He said he was the one who dismissed me as Minister of Justice. Obasanjo then, President Obasanjo was then Chief of Staff to General Murtala.
Okay.
He said, I'm not coming. Oh, so I had a problem.
You had it.
I've invited all the big MDs. You know, Shell was in Holland, The Hague. All the big shots were my people working with. And so I went to see the Chief Justice again, so I said, you must come. He said, okay, I'll do it for you.
Okay.
And he came.
All right.
You know, President Obasanjo impressed me. When he came to the table, he did the Yoruba thing.
Okay, he went down on his...
Down. Among all the dignitaries who did not know anything other than the former head of state of Nigeria. Obasanjo greeted him very respectfully.
Great.
And later on, we have to adjust the dinner table to bring him
closer to him.
To Justice Elias. This is one of my greatest diplomatic things.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
It was a breakthrough now.
This was a breakthrough. And they got him very well from that, and because President Obasanjo was coming to buy his poultry and chicken from The Hague, and Justice Elias was there, and I was the connecting link. We got him very well with both of them.
So you mended the relationship back?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Oh, that's good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now let's talk about issues and events, you know, surrounding your permanent secretaryship in the Foreign Ministry.
Yes.
Two issues here, very important issues that, you know, shaped the life and history of Nigeria.
Yes.
One is the death of General Sani Abacha, the then head of state. And of course, the other one is the death of, you know,
Abiola.
Chief Abiola, MQ Abiola, the presumed winner of the 1993 June 12 elections. Let's start with the Abacha issue. How well have you gone with Abacha before his death, and how close were you to him as a permanent
I must
secretary?
say I was very close to him.
Right.
I can tell you that I've never thought of being invited as a permanent secretary. At that time, I was Nigerian ambassador to the Soviet Union. I came home for consultation. I went to pay a courtesy visit to the president, or to the head of state then, General Abacha. He said, oh, Ambassador, where are you? I said, you know, I'm just coming from Russia. I just come to have some consultation with my Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tommy Kimi. That was the whole thing. We had tea together in his villa, and then I left. Just 1 week after I left him, I was instructed by the then secretary to the government, Chinade, that I had been appointed permanent secretary.
Okay.
And I was supposed to report on Monday to the airport because President Nimeri was coming to Nigeria. So I have to leave my village where I went to pay my respect to my people, come back to Abuja. The next day in the morning, I was at the airport as permanent secretary, taking charge of the ministry and the state visit of President Nimeri. It was my first assignment.
Okay.
We got on very well. We got on very well. I have no problems. In fact, at one time, he would ask me for some explanations. He said, look, you diplomats, you come up with some crazy issues. Come and explain to me, what does this mean? And I would try in a way, in a layman's way, to explain to him exactly what it was all about. So we got on very well. There was no problem up to the time. In fact, the last time I saw him was at the airport on Sunday during the visit of Yasser Arafat.
Okay, Yasser Arafat.
Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian. And he came in, we received him very well, he took off. That was the last time I saw him, until in the morning when I was told that he was not going to attend the summit and he passed away.
Abacha.
Abacha.
Okay. So how was the environment? I mean, passing away of a head of state, a very strong person at that time, and how did you manage the situation? As a permanent secretary, foreign affairs,
Yes.
people were waiting for him, especially in Burkina Faso, for the way he summoned.
My minister was away. Tommy Kimi has already gone to the State House, of course. I drove to the State House. As soon as I heard about the story, I met the then secretary to the government, Guinea Idris, who directed me to go back to the ministry and take charge and inform my minister, which I did, that our head of state wouldn't be there, and he has passed away. The rest is history.
Let's talk about Abiola. It's about his death, because you are the foreign affairs minister then. I was going through one of the books of the memo, I would say, of Susan Rice.
Susan Rice, yes.
And then, if I can vividly recall on one of the chapters where she talked about Abiola's death, because she was here in Nigeria when he passed on. I mean, she was even the last person that served him tea, and he passed on. And you were the permanent secretary then, because you received them. They came in, you know, the diplomats from the U.S. to come and see how there can be some, you know, good transition.
Yes.
Okay, after the death of Abacha, who passed on just about a month ago then.
A month ago, exactly.
It was a tough thing you went through.
It was one of my most challenging assignments as permanent secretary, because I took part in all the discussions when they came. Fortunately, the man who led the delegation was a personal friend of mine, Thomas Pickering, was my colleague as ambassador to Russia. We were together in Moscow. And as I was appointed permanent secretary, he was appointed under Secretary of Political Affairs, which is like a Minister of State in the State Department. And I knew him very well, because he was at one time Nigerian ambassador to, he was American ambassador to Lagos, to Nigeria, under President Shagari. So we got him very well in Moscow. And suddenly there was this big delegation led by my friend and colleague Thomas Pickering, Susan Rice, many others. There are about 8 of them, including the American ambassador, Tweddle, Bill Tweddle.
Bill Tweddle, right.
He was one of the part of the delegation. So about 8 of them came, and we had a big meeting in the villa. We discussed all the issues between the two countries, bilaterally and multilaterally. And at the end of the day, my then head of state, General Abdul Salam Abubakar, because they requested, they wanted to see Abiola, asked me to take them at 3 o'clock. I wasn't there, but he would be brought there to meet us. That was my assignment that day,
Okay.
after our meeting in the villa. And so I went to the office to arrange for all that. I worked with the ADC of the then head of state, one major, who was to bring Abiola, and they did. So, unfortunately, I couldn't take Thomas Pickering and his delegation to see Abiola because I have another national assignment
Okay.
by the government. So I have to ask my Minister of State then to take them. And that's why I wasn't there
All right.
when Abiola passed away.
Okay.
But I was informed immediately that the delegation was there. We have to inform our own authorities, and they too have to inform their own authorities. And we handled it calmly, diplomatically, quietly. In spite of all the speculations, there was no mess about it. We brought in Abiola's doctors, Abiola's family into everything. It was open. Of course, like everything else, there was a lot of speculation, stories and so on. But as far as the government is concerned, it was a very sad and unfortunate development for both countries because here were high-level delegation, diplomatic delegation, coming to see a former leader of a winning election and unfortunately dying in their presence. I read the book
Right.
by Susan Rice,
Tough love.
Tough Love.
Yes.
I read the chapter. She described the details in
Love, really, I could say, because I went through that very chapter and I
You
saw
read it too?
I read it, yeah.
It's a very interesting.
It was very interesting
Very
story.
interesting, very
interesting story.
I read it too.
And she still laments in the book that many folks in Nigeria still believe she killed him.
She said so
That's what
herself.
she said.
She said so herself.
Yes.
She said, left to the Nigerians, she was the one who killed Abiola.
Yes.
But she laughed about it. Yes.
There are, great agitations now all over the country talking about the insecurity all over the places, northeast, northwest, southeast, and even south, all over the rest of them. This brought about a lot of agitation now for restructuring the country, seeing how to remake or redo or once again rebuild Nigeria in some kind of form. You have been, member of the, Presidential Committee on Review of Nigerian Constitution between 2011 and 2012.
Yes.
And you've been a watcher of Nigerian politics and all these things, you've known them much. What do you say about these agitations?
Of course, every constitution is subject to review. Let's start with that. There is no one single permanent constitutional structure. Constitutions are modified by economic, political, and human development. So nobody will say that a constitution is not subject to amendment or restructuring or whatever it is. The issue here is question of the way and manner to go about it. Nigeria has a written constitution. The 1999 constitution as amended is still the legal basis of our unity. Every authority has to back itself now. Every current authority in Nigeria has to respect the 1999 constitution. Because if you don't recognize that, you have no authority. Every president, every member of National Assembly, every government is recognized and respected by the authority given to him by this constitution.
Okay.
So I sometimes find it difficult for people to say Nigeria has no constitution or the constitution is imposed. If it's imposed, why did you submit yourself to it? Why did you swear to take public office? Because the only authority for your public office is the constitution. But you can restructure it, you can amend it, you can do whatever you want, provided you have the mandate of the people. The mandate of the people under the current constitution can only come through parliament. Nobody can gather his friends or his people or his tribe or his religious group to say we're amending the Constitution. No, you are not. The Constitution, the current 1999 Constitution of the, can only be amended by the National Parliament or the National Assembly. These people in the National Assembly are your representatives. They are there with your mandate. If you don't want them, recall them. If you can't recall them, vote them out. Elect the ones that you feel will reflect the demand of your constitution. Sometimes I hear this funny phrase, true federalism. There is nothing like true federalism. There is nothing like federal structure is evolved through history, through culture, through political consensus within the nation state. The Constitution of Australia is federal. The Constitution of Russia is federal. The Constitution of India is federal. The Constitution of Brazil is federal. The Constitution of so many other countries, Canada, is federal. Are they the same? They're all different. They're all based on the history, the culture, the political demand of these people. It's the same thing.
What, in your opinion, do you think they are asking for when they say true federalism?
There's nothing like true federalism.
But they're asking for that.
I don't know what they're asking for.
Some of them argue that, of course, there is
There
a concentration of power in the center
Yes.
at the detriment of the subnational
Exactly.
levels.
Exactly. But the answer to that is let the regions approach the center, argue with it, and ask it to shed this responsibility. Yes.
For as an elder statesman, what did you tell Nigerians, especially your colleagues in the southeast,
Yes.
in the southwest,
Absolutely.
and
I
of
have a
course
lot of
in the
friends.
north?
All I can say is, please let us pray for our great country.
Okay.
Let us pray for Nigeria. Let this country be the star of the black man in the world. Let us have the courage to fight evil. Let's have the courage to disagree even with our own people, but let us make Nigeria a success. Some people will say, of course, Nigeria is an artificial creation. Every country is an artificial creation. There's no natural state. Not one. I challenge anybody to tell me a natural state. At one time in Africa, we are referring to Somalia as the only natural state. They have one language, no tribe, one religion, Islam. Somalia has broken up into pieces. Nobody even knows whether it exists or not. So every state is a hard effort by its own people to make it so. You create a nation, you construct a country, you have to do it through human effort. It's not a natural thing. So all I'm appealing to our people as a Nigerian ambassador, as a diplomat, is please let's put this extra effort to make this country great. Let's add more value to our own values and for the good of the Nigerian.
Brilliant. Ambassador Jibrin Dada Chinade, what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, what do I want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered first and foremost as a family man. I love my family. I love my children. I have only one wife, 3 children. That's one. I also want to be remembered as a good public officer. I've served the government and the people of Nigeria for over 35 years. I'm still serving Nigeria because that's my commitment. I'm still serving Nigeria. And all I want is to give the best of my effort, of my ability to the promotion and peaceful development of this great country. That's my only hope and prayer. Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much too for being part of this program this week. It has been Reflections with Ambassador Jibrin Dada Chinade. So many times Nigeria's ambassador to so many countries in the world. I hope you enjoyed the program. Hope you're going to come along with us next week when we come away again with another personality. Until then, I am Yusuf Nadabu Sumansi. Bye-bye.